Well, good evening, everybody. Blair Nightingale here. It's time for Market Monday. We're keeping up with the headlines, keeping this series going. So many things I want to share with you guys tonight. Popping into my mind right now. Before we get started, as I said, my name is Blair Nightingale. We got friends joining us, Facebook, YouTube. I say this every week, but for our new friends, I want to remind you, if you're coming online tonight to join us on Facebook or YouTube, make sure you click that like button, subscribe on YouTube. You don't want to miss anything we do. We got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, even Friday, right here on YouTube, all the way from biblical lessons, trading tips, keeping up with the headlines. We're going to do some, just jumped out of my head now. Friday, Mr. David Verbruggen, one of our Tradeway coaches, is going to come on and is actually going to do some training. There's live trading on Thursdays, so all kinds of stuff, okay? You want to keep plugged in. You click that like button, subscribe button on YouTube, and boom, there you go. You're plugged in. Also, if you're with us live tonight, I know lots of you will be watching us on the recording, and we're happy to have you, of course, but we've got some friends that are live tonight as well. You can always comment right there in the comment box, whichever platform you're on. Please send over your comments, questions, if you've got them, and just say hello, right? We've always got people on here who are doing that. Mark, of course, right here is joining us tonight in Ohio today, coast to coast, border to border, every single week here on Market Monday. Tradeway's got students all over the country. So excited to have you guys. Tonight, something on my heart that I wanted to share. We haven't done this in a while. We typically take some time. I'll show you the S&P 500, what's going on, what to expect for the week, what's going on in the news. I think one of the things I would say about the news this week is that this week, there's not a lot of news, right? In terms of market data that the market is really preparing for. In previous weeks, that's one of the things I've been big on highlighting. We talked about last week, Apple earnings coming up on Thursday. I'm going to show you Apple here in a minute as well. Not a lot of fireworks with the Apple earnings, right? A little bit of mixed results, but overall, the market did very well last week, and Apple reflected that as well. Cannon is with us tonight. I know this guy, right? Good to have you, sir. Is out in Napa tonight. And I've got SJ. I've got SJ as well coming on here. So thank you guys for being here live. And what's the benefit of being on live? Well, obviously you can ask questions, right? You can ask questions. That's the opportunity that you have to be able to do that. It's very unique. So if you have one, please go ahead, drop that in the comment box. I know some of you guys as well. You'll ask comments, leave comments, ask questions later, and my team will send that over to me, and they'll definitely give me an opportunity to answer then as well. So if you're on recording tonight, today, this morning, whenever you're joining us, please feel free to do that as well. Andrew is coming in, Sunnyvale, California. Appreciate you, Andrew. Thanks for being here. Steve and I just talked last week. Steve is one of our students. We've got other students on here as well. So there's Tradeway students. And that takes me to what I wanted to talk about this evening. We are going to go in. Of course, we're going to look at some charts to do that. But I want to set us up and just say, one of the things that I am consistently reminded of is that when the very first time I ever walked into a room where a trading coach from Tradeway said, you don't think you can learn to trade stocks probably, but you can. It is a learnable trade. It's a learnable trade. It's not just to trade, it's a trade. It's a learnable trade, okay? And since we all deal with money, you don't have to be, not everybody has to be a licensed financial advisor. Not everybody has to have a business degree, a finance degree, there's places in the world for those things. But in 2023, being able to open, if you will, an at-home stock trading business, okay, that is something that has been made exponentially, you could even say incredibly easier as a result of the technology, digital revolution, brokers, okay, charting. You guys look at charts with me every single week. So with that said, I want to just highlight a couple things as we're going through the week ahead. Okay, I want to highlight a couple of things that are connected to that point. Because if you're already on the journey, I want to encourage you. And I want to bring your attention to the foundation once again. If you're not yet actively learning, I mean, clearly you're curious, you're here tonight. Maybe you've begun doing some learning online, but you're saying, could I really do this? Is this something I could do? Could I learn more about how to trade in the stock market, right? How to multiply money in the stock market is ultimately the skill set that we want to learn how to use. So can I do that? Of course, is the question. Well, I want to show you some of the foundation here tonight that created confidence in me that, hey, I could learn how to do this. I could learn this. I'm still on the learning journey. You never get to the end of that, okay? But really, how do I begin to start looking at the markets and go, okay, I can make decisions in here. Okay, I can learn how to manage risk and so on. John also chiming in here as well. Welcome, John. Jeremy, good to see you on here. Awesome to hear from you as well. So you can see both Facebook, YouTube, we got lots of friends on here. So appreciate you guys being here tonight, of course. Now, let's get to the charts, and I'll explain practically some of what I mean. All right. So going into the chart view here on Charts by Tradeway, I've got a different list going here because when I use a different browser, which I do for Market Monday, let's go back. There's the Tradeway homepage. It switches. So here we are. Look at today. Not much happened today in terms of price action. It dipped for a little bit, but it didn't really go anywhere, right? That itself is the price action. Why? Because the S&P is in a pattern. I know some of you guys watching this, especially if you're students. In fact, primarily if you're already students. There's a good chance you've heard me say this many times. Okay, and tonight will be many plus one. It's important to be reminded. For those of us who've never heard this, then of course it's beneficial to be instructed on that. On what? Well, what is happening on this screen right now? Because I've got 4 lines drawn on the screen, okay, and I could say there could be 2, but we do 4, okay? It's making sense out of the price on the screen, okay? It's looking for a specific pattern, okay? Whenever I work with people who are learning to do this, their first time, the return to pattern is almost constant. Building out trades is dependent for the technical trader. Technically, swing trading, which is what we do, is predicated on finding a pattern and building out support and resistance. Did we know for sure that the market was going to stop today? No. I even helped some folks today on specific trades that they were in where some of these stocks saw a pullback, okay, meaning they were dropping a little bit, okay. Now, for options traders, that can be beneficial. It's not always that we need it to go up. That's only the case with stock trading, okay. There is options trading where you can do it one of 2 ways: when the stock goes up, when the stock goes down. There's even a third way to do it, but that's beyond the scope of tonight, where when the stock goes totally sideways. But it was pulling back. That's beneficial for those. Well, why would there be some anticipation that that may happen? It's not crystal balling it. It's not gut feeling it, right? Where are we? Well, look at the last spot that the S&P dropped. Okay, it had an M pattern. It double topped here at the 50-day. There's a clear gap line right here, okay? You've got a reversal here. Now, obviously, it came down into the support area, but you've certainly got some price information right along that line. That's what it hit Friday at the high. And now we're up into the resistance zone. Yes, it's snuggled right up against my line there, okay? That my line could be slightly higher, slightly lower. There's some subjectivity to that. What's not subjective is that it's at those previous highs, and it's definitely in the resistance zone. So the S&P 500, without looking at any news, I've tried to highlight this a little bit more the last couple of months. without going into the fundamental data and talking about interest rates and Jerome Powell and all that kind of stuff, which we will talk about in a minute. But without even going into that, I can start to go, all right, if the pattern continues the way the pattern has been going, then what is more likely to happen? Now, notice I didn't say guaranteed, right? It's not guaranteed, but what's more likely to happen? Okay. At the very least, the buying slows down. So I may say, all right, I'm not going to enter into a new position or trade here. Or if I do, I'm going to limit the amount of risk that I take in that position, not because I have an extensive business background, not because I have an economics degree, not because I have a securities license. I'm not taking shots at any of those at all. I'm not. Those can be tremendously valuable, even necessary in the right application. What I'm saying is simply, can we use price charts in a way that makes them useful to us to manage risk, not know the future? And if you've been around me for any period of time, you know I hammer on that pretty hard. It has nothing to do with knowing the future. Okay, it has to do with understanding the risk factors based on the pattern. And so we're making sense. So anytime I'm looking at a position, a possible trade, and I'm not assessing pattern, okay, in our program, the way we approach it in the beginning, then we are sort of swimming in open waters. We don't really know. We don't have a point of reference to begin to really build probability and risk management. Now, there are other ways of trading that are based entirely strictly off of probabilities in options and things like that, okay? That's a whole different way of doing it. And in our program, we talk about some of that more later on into the program. But when you're trading directionally, you're looking for the stock to move up or down. This is essential. This is essential. So when I said it is a trade, right? Learning to trade is a trade. Well, this is the foundation of being able to do that as a technical swing trader, okay, is having pattern. And we are continuing in the pattern, okay? Continuing in the pattern. We stopped at support, went up, stopped at support, opened at support, broke through, came up to it, and now we've popped up. So we even went outside of it, but it still gave us a frame of reference to see where the risk was and what we could anticipate. Now, it's the Fed, going back to the Fed, that basically said to the market, okay, you thought we were going to pause raising rates again this month, and you were right. And after an October sell-off, historically one of the weaker months of the year, we're moving into November, which is historically one of the better, okay? You guys are going to hear us talk more later into the year about something called the Santa Claus rally. Now, I don't want to put too much emphasis on something like that, but you will see it come up. And it happens. It does into the end of the year. It's not guaranteed. It doesn't always happen, but it does often happen. So we'll watch for that. But the point is that the market here in a downtrend, that's bearish, but definitely ripping higher. I mentioned to our students last week on our community pages, while it was below, okay, obviously at that point, it's looking pretty bearish. You're in a downtrend. You came down from an M, didn't even make it up to resistance, fell through support, okay, and are now struggling to get back up to resistance, right? Potentially doing what we would call a kiss goodbye, or some know as a kiss of death. But I did say we could see a pretty nasty, or you might say good, snapback, right? Which is what this is. It drops and it snaps back the other way pretty strong. Well, that's exactly what happened here, okay? It snapped back pretty strong here. But what I want to highlight one last time, we're right in that zone, but it is correlating with price information that's clear to see, okay? Now, if we break up through this, what do we watch for? Well, we watch for the outer resistance line that it used here and here that coincides with this 100-day moving average. I think that's going to be pretty important. So again, one more time, before we go into all the data and fundamental and news and this and that and war and elections and all that stuff, we're looking at this and going, okay, now if this thing is breaking up into support, pulls, I'm going to zoom this in so you can see better. Okay, what does it do? It pulls this day right here down into support. Okay, if you don't know how to read these candlesticks yet, step one, start your journey. We just did a 2-day class last weekend. Okay, we do them consistently. In fact, you saw when I clicked the symbol over here, it took me over to the Tradeway page. Although I suppose on my screen share, it's probably not showing the Tradeway page right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just put the link in the chat. If you're joining us tonight and you've never taken our introductory class, step one, start your journey. Nobody cares about your money more than you do. Equip yourself. You don't know what you don't know. I didn't know what I didn't know. Find out more of what you don't know so you can decide where you want to go from a posture of empowerment. Okay? You can choose to do whatever you want with your money, but make those decisions knowing what is happening and what is possible, right? And of course, we're here every week on Market Monday. There's 2.5, 3 years of episodes cataloged back on Tradeway TV on YouTube that you can go and we'll talk about a lot of the different aspects of the market. But ultimately, that step one, start your journey, is going to bring it all together and teach you the foundation. So that said, you will learn how to read these candlesticks, which is what we're looking at here on the screen. Now, that said, it pulls back into support and then begins to move up. So that's not a half bad time to go out and begin looking what kinds of patterns, or I should say, we've been talking through finding patterns before that, but it's not a bad time to go out and begin to look at those patterns specifically to see, are there buy points here and opportunities for looking at positions here. Right? Even if we're just talking, we're just paper trading and practicing our trading, right? That is something that we can do. How long does that take? Well, it takes as long as it takes, right? Look at Apple. Now, earnings was right in here. We don't trade over earnings. Okay, so earnings clearly was in the middle. We'd be remiss to not point out. We wouldn't be doing this down here. Apple's not here. But I do want to highlight for you, okay? Even though earnings came in here after the bell on this day. So these days were not earnings. This day and this day were after earnings. I would say two things are still true. Number one, where did it hit here? Right? Support. What about here? Same line. Same line this day and this day. Then earnings happens and it still stops at resistance. Now it may blast through there. Okay, it may change. We don't know that yet. But this is a very clean move off of the support level. Okay. So this gave us context for the price, and this was a very clean move. We also, I've got to think of it in my head now. I just about lost it. Okay, we've been following along with this one. This is something that I do within our community just to begin to find patterns. That's all we're trying to do. Is just find patterns, okay? And this is one of those patterns we've been following. Where is it at? Right at a previous high. Healthy uptrends, higher highs, higher lows. Test previous highs before breaking into new highs, right? Most of the time. Not all the time, of course, but most of the time, they'll at least retest that high. And this one may break through. We don't know, but that's a very nice move off of 171.50 level to, let's call it 188.50. In fact, right where it's at is 186.50, right? Now that's the extreme low to the high, okay? Even from here, 175 up to 186, 185. It's a nice move, really nice move in the stock. Blair, are you just picking two that worked? Yes, I am. I'm picking two that worked, right? Because plenty of other stocks did the same thing. And of course, if other stocks out there weren't even in a pattern, they weren't bouncing at support. This is where we get into some of the rule sets that we teach in that step one class. We wouldn't even want to be in those trades anyway. Okay. Let's go and look at some of these other ones, right? Meta, we looked at part of that Magnificent Seven we talked about. Okay. This guy, right? Not really in a pattern. Okay. So something where we look at just doing a little bit more workshop tonight, right? Even something like that, channeling. Okay, now this, these candles here, this candle here, these candles here. So really, this is why we do those two lines. Okay. You can get the extreme highs and lows, and then you can capture the zone in between. I'm going to reset that, try it like this. Okay. And there's NVIDIA. Okay. And there are many patterns out there that have done that. Why? Well, what is this? This is an index. What's an index? Well, it's 500 stocks, this index, 500 stocks in one screen. So if this index is looking this way, certainly there are going to be stocks out there that look that way as well. Okay. Because that's what made this one look the way it looks. Okay. So this is why Market Tone is this helpful tool for us to be able to go, okay, generally speaking, what's happening out there? And then I can go out there and connect with those individual stocks from there. Okay. So that is what lays the foundation for being able to make decisions. Now, what happens between those lines, that's where training comes in. I like to say behind the eyes, between the ears, what's happening there? Of course, that's a part of the process too, right? I can tell you from personal experience, that's a huge part of this process. There's a book on my shelf I often quote that says, if how-tos were enough, we'd all be skinny, rich, and happy. Knowing what to do is very important, but knowing what to do with what to do is something different entirely, right? So very, very important. So the S&P 500 continuing in a downtrend, okay? Things looking, obviously, you can see that green streak there, much more positive right now, taking a pause at those highs. So we're looking to see, is the market tomorrow, maybe the next day, is it going to be able to break up through there, okay? Buyers are resilient. I'm not doubting them at this point. I still feel like they could make another push here, but I'm going to wait to see if it breaks through that area so that I don't get caught in that, saying, hey, I think it's going to smash through, and then it's actually just in resistance. What does it tend to do at resistance, right? Well, it tends to go down, right? So we'll have to just wait and see what's going to happen there with that, okay? So that said, lastly, let's just go over, look at the NASDAQ, and you'll notice, look at that. There's our lines from last week, okay? Right up at the top of the range, knocking on the ceiling though, right? Definitely applying some pressure to that upper zone. So we'll see. The NASDAQ has been stronger. You'll notice it's got some lowering highs, but the lows are even. Okay, so there's been some defense by the buyers. They've been willing to hold the price in that level. So we'll see if they can push it higher from here. And if we start to see those kinds of breakouts, then you've got something more like what we had over here, right? You've got that nice downtrend. It's knocking on the ceiling right here, right? It's not red. It's not dropping. And then you get a huge breakout. Nice, solid boost in volume of shares traded that day as well. And then it gaps up only to pull back just a little bit here, but huge breakout. Not typical to see one this strong, but definitely a strong breakout on here. Are we going to see more of a breakout on the NASDAQ and the S&P as we go into the end of the year? Okay, interesting to see this happening at a time when it's a little bit more news neutral as well. News neutral is not a terrible thing for traders. The market can sometimes go really flat. That's not helpful, but it also can take some of the unpredictable volatility out of the market. That makes it a little bit easier for trades to have some more consecutive days in a row where they're not so influenced by news. Okay, that'll come back in full swing. Earnings season definitely winding down, not totally done. Okay, but definitely the majority of reporting companies are done by now in this particular earnings season. So I want you to go out there. If you're still, if you are, I should say, getting active out there, you want to make sure you're checking those earnings reports. And come on back here next week. Market Monday will update next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We're right here on YouTube. So join us at any time on here with the recordings, and then, of course, live every single day. Appreciate you guys being on here with me tonight so much. This ultimately is to set you up to know a little bit of what are the questions I'm asking for this week. If you're an options trader, okay, is there some potential shorting opportunities in here? If we get that kind of confirmation, move to the downside, okay? As we move out of a pretty negative month, I want you to be careful on the downside after such a heavy snapback. Make sure we get out of this zone that we're in right now, or we go small as we take maybe, I should say, as we maybe take what we call a starter position in here if you're going to take some overnight risk in the S&P stocks. All right, guys, appreciate you being on here, and we will see you next time. Good evening and good night.